Good afternoon, everyone. Please take your seats. We'll get started in 1 minute. Thank you, everyone. Good afternoon. I hope you all had good lunch breaks and are full of energy, ready to make fast progress through the remainder of the afternoon. So thank you for a constructive conversation this morning. That was very helpful. I have some thoughts about ways that we can continue moving quickly through the rest of the material. We will come to those in a moment. First, I asked over lunch for a small group of teams to meet to discuss a potential resolution to the text in paragraph 3. I wonder if there's a party who's willing to give me a report on how that conversation went. Australia, you have the floor. Thank you, Australia.
Thank you, Co-Chair. We met as you requested over lunch and discussed the paragraph 3 in the first cluster on convergence of issues. It became very clear that we weren't converged. I don't know if that's a word, actually. It did not belong in convergence of issues at this time. And so the majority of parties in that small group agreed to the deletion of paragraph 3, noting that it could be brought up for discussion under paragraph 18 if parties so desired. But we did not have consensus on this, Chair. Apologies.
Thank you, Australia, for volunteering to provide the bad news. That's very helpful. I'm very, very grateful for the hard work, for parties sacrificing some of their break, I understand. And if it's an area in which we currently don't have convergence, then it's an area where under paragraph 18, we can agree to do some more work, and that's what we shall do. Is there any objection at this point to deleting paragraph 3 from the text as it stands? Thank you very much. So we shall return to our deliberations on cluster B. We had an initial exchange where we gathered quite a lot of information from you all. That was very welcome and very helpful. I wondered if I could try and sum up a few points so that we could move through quite quickly. So on paragraph 21, we heard quite a few interventions asking that we make more, a better linkage in this text to the objectives of the convention, a linkage to biodiversity, use of the word biodiversity, biodiversity-related sustainable development goals. We will capture some wording for you overnight. Does anyone have anything additional on paragraph 21? Is there anything else that we need to do on paragraph 21? Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Do you now continue the list that was built before lunch?
I'm not going to. If I can beg your indulgence, I'm just trying to wrap up a couple of things,
okay,
and then I'll come to my list. But I'm keen that we don't repeat things that we've already covered. So
exactly. So I just press the button to get on the list if it's. Yeah. Thanks.
We have a photo of the list from before lunch, Norway, so we can come to you shortly. It's very well organized here. So paragraph 21, anything additional on paragraph 21 other than making a better reference to biodiversity? I see Togo requesting the floor.
Oui, merci, monsieur.
Yes, thank you very much, Co-Chair. Togo is noting the comments that have been made on this paragraph 21. And we don't want to lose sight of the fact that the global framework and in its section D makes a link with the Sustainable Development Goals. And the agenda that we have here to 2030 for the global framework should be linked with the Sustainable Development Goals. So perhaps we could establish that link. But we should first talk about the goals of the convention and the global framework for biodiversity first. And then, in a second stage, later on, we can make a little wink-wink to the Sustainable Development Goals. We'll come back with a specific proposal for wording later. Thank you.
Thank you, Togo. That's very helpful. So I'm looking for people to take the floor just briefly on paragraph 21. Thank you, Togo, for doing that. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for all your efforts. I'm just a little bit worried because we're trying to restate the obvious. I mean, what else are we doing then working on the priorities of the convention and on the GBF? I think paragraph 21 actually has a specific meaning, and it actually sort of refers to other, and I think there was a proposal to say biodiversity-related priorities, including, for example, relevant sustainable development goals. We would not see merit in spending time in reiterating in the context of this paragraph the three objectives of the convention or the GBF or what not. I think that is already framed in the introductory part of this text, where you actually have explained to us that what we're doing here is framed by the framework, the convention, and the Decision 15.9. So I think I would really, in order to move forward, we should refrain from continuously trying to bring in everything which is part of our natural framework. We don't need to repeat that. It's obvious. And I think the meaning of paragraph 21, when we actually say biodiversity-related priorities and relevant sustainable development goals, really make the necessary sort of links. And I think it really is others, not the ones that really closely guide our work. Thank you.
Thank you, European Union. Next, I have Uganda.
Thank you, Coach. I think the EU makes our doubts ease because we were worried about the other related priorities. But with the insertion of the word other biodiversity-related priorities, that makes it better. However, we are not very sure with the including the relevant sustainable development goals, because we can have goals like water, which could actually get a relationship with the biodiversity. And so a party or a recipient of the fund could actually spend on a very unrelated goal, but actually relate it in their proposal. So I think we just need to be very careful about the sustainable development goals, because all of them actually can relate to biodiversity if you want to relate them to. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Uganda. Nature does, after all, underpin everything. That's very helpful. Togo, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, sir. As I said, for me, this paragraph is trying to restate what's in D of the GBF, so we can talk about the related objectives or related priorities related to the convention and the GBF, including for the relevant SDGs. And of course, relevant, takes into account each specificity. Of course, we don't have to list them, laundry list them, but everyone can imagine what they'd be. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Togo. I'll move on from this. This is helpful. This is a helpful exchange. We've got lots to capture. I'll move on after Algeria.
Sorry, thank you, Monsieur Co-Chair. So regarding the point 21, so we think, we support of course, the African position on the comments made in the morning session, and we think that a further discussion is needed because we don't understand what are the other related priorities. So this is for us, it is not clear. And also, when we say relevant SDGs, what is that means? What are the SDGs and how we will prioritize all those SDGs? So for us, it's not clear, and it should be, the funding should be directed toward the context we are discussing it. So while we are adding other elements that we think that are not relevant to what we are discussing, and it's not a common for us. We think it's not. It cannot include it as an element on which we have a potential convergence. Thank you, Monsieur Co-Chair.
Thank you very much, Algeria. Egypt, you'd like to speak on paragraph 21?
Yes, indeed. Let me just look at it differently. Whenever we talk about other priorities, we mean biodiversity-related conventions, because all of them, and all what we want from them is just to have an umbrella of the global biodiversity framework. But when it comes to the SDGs, it is very broad, because it is not only 14 and 15 goals. It could be 1 and 2, 3. I mean, if you count them, more than half of the SDGs are actually related to biodiversity. But biodiversity-related conventions are very, very specific in some way or another, and we hope that coming Montreal KBJ Global Biodiversity Framework can be used as an umbrella for all of these. So we could put all of the priorities together. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. So we shall capture all of your helpful comments in a revised paragraph. Paragraph 23, there was an exchange about the chapeau of the paragraph, which is currently quite open, I think. It's currently quite, it doesn't seem to direct us in any particular way. There was a suggestion from Canada, who I'm going to come to, that the beginning of paragraph 23 should be replaced to needs-based funding, needs-based, effectively saying that, funding allocations should be made on the basis of need according to a certain criteria. There was some pushback against that. So my suggestion to move us forward would be that we keep 23, the chapeau, as it stands, and we have a question for further consideration whether all funding should be allocated on the basis of need. Canada, in the first instance, could you accept that proposal?
Yes, I think we could accept that as a way for going forwards right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. Egypt, you have the floor.
I agree with you, Mr. Chair, that we should focus on the needs and the assessment. Because once you identify needs, you need to assess them, otherwise it could be whatever. And this is very good. On the other hand, in 23, B, I have asked several times for any clarification on what does it mean level of development of the country. I would appreciate if it's possible someone can respond to that. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. So that was indeed my next question. Egypt had requested some clarification on the wording in 23B. Is anyone able to provide clarification or a suggested alternative? If not, I'll suggest that we move it to an area for further discussion and consideration. Morocco, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to know how are you going to determine these factors? Are you going to do a study to determine what the distinguished representative of Egypt has just said? Will there be a study that will be based on certain criteria that will determine this type of financing? Will there be some sort of an analysis or some sort of study that will be done? Thank you.
Thank you, Morocco. I mean, I think that's the question that our Egyptian colleague is asking. I think there are several ways currently according to which the level of development can be considered or assessed. I think that the discussion at hand is whether we're ready to agree that that is a factor that should be taken into account when needs-based allocations of funding from the fund are being made. India, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to give a quick response on this, on the issue in para 23. Before that, I just want to mention that in para 22, if you could add funding should be allocated in a fair, equitable, transparent and accountable manner. That is one suggestion. And in para 23, would like to support what Egypt has said and the clarification on the level of development. As also would like to support the intervention made by Brazil earlier before lunch, wherein we would like to have the reference of and the development of nature-based economy in 23F. That could be removed. And we also would like to do away with the point number 23G, the ability of the project to absorb the level relevant funding. That needs to be deleted. These are a few suggestions. Thank you, Chair.
So thank you, India. That's helpful. So on 23B, I'm going to suggest that we move that to the areas for further consideration. I don't think we converge on that. On 23G, the ability of the project to absorb the relevant funding. We discussed this last night. We've discussed it again today. I don't think we converge. So I'm going to move that to areas for further consideration. And then on 23F, I'm going to suggest whether the development of nature-based economy should be a relevant factor for allocating funds. I suggest we move the second part of 23F to the areas for further consideration. So that's 23B, the second part of 23F, and 23G. Norway, you have the floor.
Thank you. I was just nervous, Chair, that you had forgotten about the list you built before lunch. That's why I'm taking the floor. So regarding 20, which Brazil suggested to not delete, in particular in developing countries, we would like to, if it's not deleted, we would actually like to add LDCs and SIDS. So add in particular LDCs and SIDS. We agree with the emphasis on capabilities and needs, in particular challenges in LDCs and SIDS with invaluable and irreplaceable biodiversity. And regarding the term mega-diverse, that's a phrase that is not used in the Convention on Biological Diversity, so that would be outside the remits of the CBD, which is sort of the frame we're working within. And as with Australia in 21, we would like to link back to biodiversity there. Regarding 23G, the ability of the project to absorb the relevant funding. We agree that there's no convergence in that, and that it could be moved down for elements needed for further discussion. Just to note one thing, that the rationale behind our proposal here, behind the absorption, is that we don't want money to be standing into a bank account, right? That's the simple rationale behind that. We want the money to be spent on concrete projects as soon as possible. I think there are some exceptions to that, and that was pointed out by the IIFB, amongst others, right? So self-determination. So the mechanism should not kind of decide what the indigenous peoples and local communities should spend the money for in terms of direct access. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway, very much. So we will come to paragraph 20, I promise. For now, let's just finish. I think we're very close to ending 23. Algeria, you have the floor.
Thank you, Monsieur Co-Chair. So regarding the point 23, F, we think that the concept also is not well defined or understood and could be deleted as suggested by others or moved for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think that raises a good suggestion. Does anyone object to the deletion of the second part of 23F, the development of the nature-based economy? Does anyone object to the deletion of that? Good, then we can delete that. Chile, you have the floor. Oh, no, okay, thank you. So let's move to paragraph 20, where we had a suggestion to remove the wording at the end of the paragraph, in particular in developing countries, and we've just had a suggestion from Norway to include a reference to LDCs and SIDS. I don't think now is a good time to get into this discussion. I think we want to keep moving. It's important for all of us. We all feel very strongly about this wording and the objective of this convention. But I'm going to try and find a way that enables us to just move forward, because I don't think now is a particularly useful time to be having the conversation. Your job is to tell me if I'm wrong, but a possible wording suggestion could be the following. Funding should be directed towards activities that support the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity and the implementation of NBSAPs. And then in areas for further consideration, we say exactly the same, but whether funding should be directed towards activities that support the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity and the implementation of NBSAPs, in particular in developing countries, LDCs, and SIDS. I welcome reactions to what I genuinely hope is a objective way of trying to move us forward. Brazil, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you for proposal, but I'm not sure I quite understood the comment by my colleague from Norway. He mentioned mega-diverse countries. There was never a proposal to add mega-diverse countries in this paragraph. I just mentioned mega-diverse countries earlier to flag that if we wanted to get into detail, we could, and we firmly believe that mega-diverse countries should be receive priorities for the reasons already stated many times, that they harbor most of the world's biodiversity, they have to bear the burden, most of the burden of conservation and sustainably using biodiversity and fulfilling the targets of GBF, because biodiversity is unevenly distributed, and we have said that many times. But we do not want to get into this kind of discussion right now, just as you flag out, and we are in the same understanding. That's why, in particular in developing countries, the most general and formulation in this regard. And I saw no opposition, no, it's not true, I heard some opposition, but it's still, we think this is fair to leave the paragraph as it stands, without trying to qualification. Because otherwise we can get into a fight, or whether we're gonna get into a discussion trying to decide now which countries should receive funding, and I think we're not gonna do that. But I think it's only fair that says the leaving dimension to particularly in developing countries. Because, I mean, we're not getting to detail if it's lesser developing countries, if it's mega diverse countries, small developing, we're not qualifying, just saying developing countries. And I hope there is general agreement from this plenary that most of the challenges faced in the conservation sustainable use of biodiversity are faced by developing countries. I mean, this is just common sense for us. And a fact that's hard to dispute, that has been documented over and over and over by IPBES and many other international instruments. So I really struggle to understand why it's so hard to accept a mention that priority should be given to developing countries in particular. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Next on my list is Egypt.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think we shouldn't spend time on that, because this is the language that Secretariat will do normally. Whenever we use developing countries, we always say least developed countries and say some whatever. So we shouldn't, just leave it up to the Secretariat to follow up on that, because this is a standard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Egypt. That's very helpful. Let's take a few more on the list. Jordan.
Shukran. Thank you, Co-Chair. I would like to support what my colleagues from Brazil and Egypt have just said. I think supporting developing countries should be paramount when it comes to implementation. We all know that developing countries have problems with financing and mobilizing resources for the implementation of projects. Of course, there were references to LDCs and to other countries in various documentation, different literature. However, if we were to speak about developing countries in this context, I think that will cover all the other countries that we want to include. We know that these countries will need financing and will need support, and I think keeping the text of paragraph 20 as is will relate to Article 19 of the Convention. Thank you, Co-Chair.
Thank you, Jordan. I have a long list. I want to ask a different question. Does anyone support the deletion of "in particular" in developing countries? Who supports the deletion of "in particular" in developing countries? Switzerland, please take the floor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Yes, so we would support to delete this final part of paragraph 20 and to end after action plans. Is this correct, how I understood your proposal? Okay, so because for us, I think on the first part we all agree, and it seems that we don't have agreement on this specification in particular in developing countries. And we also see that this would somehow contradict with, or could be somehow a contradiction with paragraph 23, because in paragraph 23 we already set out the various factors that could be used to determine the level of funding allocated, and I think this is much more related to this, and therefore we would like to delete this specification. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. I see Zimbabwe.
Okay, thank you very much. I don't see any reason why people should be so worried about deleting the phrase, in particular in developing countries. It's already written in a compromise format, but it says in particular, which means it doesn't close out anybody. It simply places a great emphasis on developing countries and when it comes to channeling of funds towards biodiversity conservation. So it's already a compromise statement, but it says in particular developing countries. Everyone is involved, but the particular emphasis is on developing countries. So I think it's fair enough, it's compromise enough. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Zimbabwe. I'll take Uganda.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I think that we need to maintain that language that still includes in particular in developing countries. And this is the language that the convention also uses. And as Zimbabwe says, it does not lock out anybody. And for us, we're actually very, very particular with the retention of that statement. So we support Brazil in saying that we will actually insist that that statement is retained. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Uganda. Does anyone else support the deletion of, in particular, in developing countries? We've heard from Switzerland. Does anyone else support Canada? Could you take the floor?
Yeah, we feel that the particular issue of developing countries is actually amply covered in the categories under 23, and that what we're really talking about is needs-based, and so that was why we had suggested putting that in the chapeau for 23, and then the specific issue of how the funding should be directed towards activities that support conservation, sustainable use, and NBSAP implementation. That's a separate point. And yes, there are specific needs that are faced more by some countries than others, but that's covered in 23 under that idea of needs. Thanks.
Thank you, Canada. So I made a proposal which was effectively to state that funding should be directed towards conservation, sustainable use, and NBSAPs. And then it was to ask whether funding should be directed towards conservation, sustainable use, and the implementation of NBSAPs, in particular in developing countries, LDCs and SIDS. Switzerland and Canada, would that compromise be acceptable to you? Switzerland is nodding, is that correct? Canada can compromise there. Can I ask Brazil to take the floor? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. As I tried to make clear earlier, but maybe I wasn't clear enough, the reference to developing countries is already a compromise. We are not getting to details of which developing countries are to be given priority. We stated clearly that we have a preference for that, and we are opening. We are abandoning we are not insisting that our particular preference would be medically diverse countries in favor of leaving a more general formulation. This is already a compromise. That's the third time I'm saying that. No? So I would please ask the parties who are objecting to reconsider that. there are a number of references in the GBF in this particular regard, like in paragraph 15, in paragraph 18, that mention especially developing country parties. It's a very widely, very general formulation, and I will kindly ask parties to refrain on insisting and getting into detail in this regard. I think that's, we had heard numerous parties supporting this proposal, parties from several different regions, not only Latin America, not only mega diverse countries, but all developing countries. So this is a very important point to all developing countries. And so we would please ask the parties to reconsider. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. Canada or Switzerland, are you able to reconsider? Switzerland, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. So for us, just the discussion that we are having right now somehow shows very clearly that we don't have convergence on this particular point. And so we thought like it would be a good suggestion, or it was a good suggestion that you made, co-chair, that we just put this under the issues for further discussion. I think that's the way we are proceeding here in this paper. And so we would like to go along with your suggestion. Thank you.
Thank you, Switzerland. So I'm keen to move on. We've got lots to cover. I would like to propose that Switzerland and Canada do some homework, which would involve combining paragraphs 20 and 23, and to test that with some of the parties who have spoken about the importance of the phrase in developing countries, in particular in developing countries. To link. Thank you. So a format of wording that combines paragraphs 20 and 23 or links them, and then to test that with some of the other parties. Ideally, we could do that while the rest of the plenary continues, and we can come back to it at the end of the discussion. But if not, we'll seek an update from you a little later in the contact group. Thank you very much. So I have a few speakers on my list. I'd like to move on to cluster C, but I'd like very quickly any last reflections on cluster B, which we haven't yet heard. There's no need to repeat material that we've already heard. Please don't repeat things we've already discussed. Quick reflections on new points, and then we'll move to cluster C. Thank you. Colombia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Well, I'm going to try to be brief. I wanted to express my support for my colleague from Brazil, also for my colleague from Egypt. I don't think if the discussion of the developing countries is unnecessary at this moment. We should, again, move on. I think that there are a few things that we feel that should be included into the discussion, especially in point 23A, including, the indigenous people, local communities, and also women. I don't know if this is the point, this is the place to discuss it, but we would like to share that concern that we'll see this as an ecosystem. Where is biodiversity located? What are the hotspots of where biodiversity needs more support to improve those conditions? If you graph that, you will see that it's located with developing countries. So that's one of the many reasons why we consider that it's important to keep that point. But again, that is something that can be discussed later. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia. I see Norway, then Japan. Norway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It was just a point that I haven't seen many Pacific SIDs here. And I think it's usually their position to have a reference to Pacific SIDS. It's just because, you know, I think it should be a matter for further consideration, because otherwise I'm afraid it will, you know, we think we might have a consensus on the formulation, then later it will come up again. It's just that point. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. Japan, then Egypt.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. There seems to have been a reporting from Australia on the issue of paragraph 3, cluster A. We have some comment on this. Is this allowed to say it?
Can I finish the round of interventions on cluster B and then come back to you, Japan? Thank you very much, with your indulgence. Egypt and then Morocco.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Are we in C or in B?
B, finishing B.
Well, as I said before, we support the statement given by Brazil because it's very, very clear. But as I said, Secretariat can help, can provide some guidance. Whenever we mention developing countries, we continue on this development. You know, be sure that we get guidance from Secretariat for that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Egypt. I see Morocco and then the Maldives. Morocco.
Merci.
Thank you once again, Chair. I'm just having another look over. As the section was drafted, you've spoken about 19, paragraph 19, the strategic priorities and disbursement criteria of the fund should be decided by the Conference of the Parties. Then, turning to paragraph 22, we talk about funding should be allocated in a transparent and accountable manner. In 23, we talk about various factors that could be used. That is why I just spoke about, is there going to be a precise study on classifying priorities to allocate these funds for the disbursement of these funds? It needs to be clearer here to avoid any subjectivity on how we look at developing countries. Let's have a very clear and transparent approach when we talk about funding, which is going to be allocated in a transparent and accountable manner to avoid these types of discussions which keep coming up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Morocco. My colleague from the Secretariat is going to address us.
Merci, le Maroc.
Thank you very much, Morocco. I'm going to take the floor in French. It seems that there's a mistake in the French translation of the document of the CRP. In paragraph 19, it says that the strategic priorities and disbursement criteria of the fund should be decided by a decision of the COP. Yet, in the English version of this document, the priorities are decided by the COP. So the priorities are not going to be decided. This is going to be something that's going to be decided at each COP. I hope that answers your comments raised.
Morocco, you have the floor.
And the other part is to have very clear criteria on priorities for the disbursement. That is what I wanted to add. So not some factors which might be studied. So we have to be really clear on what these factors are and what degree of prioritization is going to be given to each of these factors. Thank you.
Thank you, Morocco. Maldives and then Colombia.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I was refraining myself from taking the floor as not to repeat what's been said, but as a states country, I take the floor to support what Brazil said and also what other countries said along with Norway. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, Moldy. So Colombia and then Mauritius.
Ours is a small suggestion, a small request to adding something to the point 22. Yes, funding should be allocated in a transparent and accountable manner, and also take into account the gender responsiveness of whatever is going to be executed with those funds. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia, Mauritius, and Cuba.
Thank you, Co-Chair. My contribution is also with regard to the statement made in respect to small island states and developing countries. But if you go along the articles of the conventions, this has already been stated there. If you look at Article 20, paragraph 6, which says developing countries, in particular small island states. So the definitions of developing countries has already been spelled out within the convention text. So I think if we align ourselves to what the convention text says, I don't think there should be confusion or something like that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So 2 last interventions on B, Cuba and Togo. Cuba, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. Cuba, as a small island development state, although we'd also like to express that we feel very much part of those countries and developing countries, and therefore we like to align ourselves with the proposal made by Brazil. Thank you.
Thank you, Cuba. And then last on the list is Togo.
Merci, monsieur.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. We would like the Secretariat to give us the exact wording of the translation of paragraph 19, please. And then we will support Brazil's position. And as Egypt has said, the Secretariat should help us. And that is how we see the GBF works at a number of levels through developing countries, particularly in Section 1 on the mechanism of enabling conditions to support. So I think Brazil's proposal has been accepted by all parties. Thank you.
Thank you, Togo. Secretariat, can you repeat the precise translation of 19 in English? Was it paragraph 19?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, sorry. Donc, les priorités.
The strategic priorities and disbursement criteria of the fund should be decided by the Conference of the Parties, not necessarily through a decision.
Thank you very much. I see other parties waiting to take the floor, but I'm very, very keen that we move on to Cluster C. I did promise that Japan could come back to speak to the issue in paragraph 3, so I'd like to turn to Japan so that we can cover that now. Japan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair, for giving us this time. On paragraph 3, cluster A, we took part in this lunchtime session, and we had a strange feeling that parties seem to have different understanding on the same issue. It is regrettable that some parties do not correctly understand the legal status of COP decisions. We hope these misunderstandings are reconciled in future discussions, which we are happy to engage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan. Your point is well noted. I'm going to give the microphone to my co-chair, who's going to lead us in a discussion of Cluster C. Thank you.
Thank you very much for all the contribution to Cluster B, but at some point we need to move on somehow. So we are moving on to Cluster C on non-monetary benefit sharing. When you look at Cluster C, a lot of elements have been proposed as possible areas for convergence, And this was the feeling that was in the room during the contact groups. And we only have, at the moment, 2 areas that elements on which we might need further discussion. So I'm hoping that we will not elongate the list on elements that need further discussion, and that at least maybe this would be one of those clusters where we would maintain having a lot of convergence. So I'll start with paragraph 28, and maybe considering that most of those elements are already presented as potential areas for convergence in a broader sense, and we wouldn't want to maybe complicate the paragraphs and leave it as broad as possible. If you would take the floor maybe just to identify those areas that you feel do not belong in this section for convergence, and maybe leave those that already you feel that they are areas of convergence, unless maybe you want to improve some language or so forth. So I'll start with paragraph 28. If you can identify those areas that you feel should be moved to the other section. Otherwise, it's okay to say that we agree that these areas should be areas of convergence, and then we can move very fast. So on my list, I'll start with the parties. I have Egypt, Algeria, then Philippines. Egypt, you have the floor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. 28C, the level of development of the country as it was before. So we suggest to, either delete it or it goes for further clarification or further discussion. 28C. Then for me, I think that we need to focus on 2 things, because we keep talking about needs, or capacities, whatever. Let us focus on only needs assessment. And then we go straight to all of relevant ones, rather than to have for every individual one, because you still need at the institutional level, for example. So, and the same thing for others as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. I give the floor now to Algeria.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. So we changed how the intervention could be made, Madam Co-Chair. So we start with parties. I would like to talk on behalf of the region. I am allowed, or we keep this for?
No, you can intervene, but keep it to paragraph 28 for now.
Yes,
okay,
of course. Yeah, thank you, Madam Co-Chair. So for 28, Africa position is, so I will give, if you allow me, Madam Co-Chair, a short, quick comment, general comment on the cluster C. So I'm speaking on behalf of Africa. So Africa has observed that the most of her views were captured in this cluster. However, in addition, Africa maintained that minor modification should be maintained, and we will highlight this when it comes to the paragraph 29. Regarding the paragraph 28, so we agree, but for the 28B, we would like to see analysis added, as suggested yesterday. And also the 28C, this needs further clarification, and we suggest that it will be moved to the element that need further discussion. Also, as mentioned by Egypt, we suggest to remove capacity and focus more on needs. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
Thank you, Algeria. From the initial interventions from Egypt and Algeria, there is a proposal to remove C, and I think in the earlier discussion, there wasn't even any party that came up to provide clarification. So maybe this is one of those things that we can live without. So is there any objection to deleting C? I see none, so I think we can delete this. And then the other intervention from Algeria is to include analysis, all right. So we'll move to Philippines, then Cote d'Ivoire.
Yes, for 28, we echo Algeria on the assessment. And then also perhaps maybe for F, a little bit of distinction on the institutions, including academic or research institutions. And then lastly, for letter D, I think I heard the word self-identified needs of indigenous peoples. So perhaps that could be added as well. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Cote d'Ivoire, followed by Colombia.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. My statement is going to apply to D, E, and F. I also have a doubt with regard to the use of capacity here, and I'm wondering that if we're going to identify needs, or if we're linking it to the capacity gap there. So I need to understand that. And the other thing is, when we talk about agencies and institutions, national agencies and institutions, I'm wondering if we need to clarify that, specify more what they are exactly, which ones. And then I also think that F, for example, should be part of the capacity that parties and countries are going to identify as their needs, because I don't think it's outside of that. I think when a country needs to identify its capacity needs, it takes into account all of the stakeholders and structures. And then lastly, I understand, or I recall that the African group requested to have a definition of what it means by stakeholders. E was stakeholders. What is that? Who are the stakeholders? Maybe if we can better explain who exactly that is, who are we talking about here, in order to help identify needs. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cote d'Ivoire. I now have Colombia, followed by Canada. Colombia.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. We had a small adjustment that we wanted to make to the 28A, the language, the need for the capacity, the need for capacity building and development and technical and scientific cooperation for the purposes of conservation and sustainable use. That could be an addition to clarify a little bit better. We also share some of the concerns regarding the definitions of stakeholders and the needs of indigenous people and local communities who are really the stakeholders. Are we talking about governments, IPLCs, or who's really involved and who really would benefit from it? Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Canada.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair. Canada, happy to support Philippines on 28D about the self-identified needs of Indigenous peoples and local communities, and that we'd also like to reflect that our support for Brazil, saying something very similar on 23A. So that's back in the previous bit, but we're very happy to support self-identified needs of IPLCs. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. I don't see any more requests for the floor, and I haven't heard any party saying they don't agree that these are areas of convergence, apart from the very few suggestions to improve the text. So we take it that all these areas, apart from the C that we deleted, are considered as areas of convergence with those small improvements that were made. So this is good, at least something to be happy about. Then we can go to paragraph 29. So I think we can take the same approach, comment if we feel that one of the subparagraphs is not an area of convergence, or it's an area of convergence, but we just want to have these additions. I think that will also be welcome. So I see Japan, Chile, then Algeria. Japan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On paragraph 28E, we have a comment. I think we should, the capacity needs of stakeholders, it is not enough. We suggest to add, after stakeholders, implementing biodiversity conservation activities There were views to clarify stakeholders in this context at contact group. We interpret stakeholders as those who implement biodiversity conservation activities. So for the sake of accuracy, we propose this. We suggest this addition. On paragraph 32, we propose on the line, the second line, we would like to delete, take into account lessons learned from those experiences. It is not quite clear lessons learned, what we learned from what. So we suggest deletion of take into account lessons learned from those experiences. Then after that, on the second line, paragraph 32, we propose to add research outcomes rather than project. On the line 3, again, we propose research outcomes rather than projects, because we are sure that licensing fees are categorized as monetary benefit in our protocol. For this reason, we propose this addition on paragraph 32. On paragraph 34, if other parties agree, we propose the deletion of this paragraph 34. This is the mandate of Substar. If other parties agree, because this is not our mandate, to be precise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan, for those contributions. I now give the floor to Chile, followed by Algeria.
Gracias, Co-Chair. Quisiera clarificar.
Thank you very much, Madam Co-Chair. I just wanted to have clarifications on 28. After hearing a number of comments, according to what we understood, we thought that we're going to delete 28C and 28E as well. But I would just like to have confirmation of that. Are those deleted, 28C and 28E?
Okay, this is for paragraph 28. All right, so for paragraph 28, it's 28C. That was proposed for deletion and there was no objection. And you're happy with that? Okay, all right. For paragraph E, I think there was just an addition to qualify the institutions, to say including academic and research institutions, but it wasn't proposed for deletion.
No, that's
for F.
Okay, so Chile, maybe if you could come again on paragraph 28E.
In 28E, I just want to know what happened at the end, because it was quite confusing. I don't know if this was considered like for further discussion or will be deleted. I understood will be deleted, but just want to confirm that.
I think there were other parties that wanted to qualify the capacity, gaps, and needs. And there was a proposal by Japan to include capacity needs of stakeholders implementing biodiversity activities. So it wasn't proposed for deletion unless there was a party that did and they would want to raise it now. But there were those proposals.
Okay.
All right, so with that, okay, on paragraph 28, Brazil.
Yes, thank you, Chair. We do have comments on other paragraphs, but I understand we're talking specifically about Japan's proposal. Is that right? Or do you want me to make all comments I have in this section?
We had moved from paragraph 28.
Okay.
And I think Japan had also made an addition on paragraph 28E to include stakeholders implementing biodiversity activities. And we did not hear any objections.
Yes,
so
my point is we prefer to retain the original language. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Brazil. I think for now we'll just park it as an area where we have like two options, and therefore E could be moved down as an area where we do not yet have convergence. We feel that it's something that we can look at later on. So now we can continue with paragraph 29. I have Algeria followed by Egypt. Algeria?
Mike?
Okay.
Okay, thank you. So regarding the 29 para, so 29C, we agree, but for the 29C, we suggest, Africa suggests that this should be removed for further discussion and require more clarification on what does it mean achieving equity in research and relationship. For us, it's not clear. And for 29D, so delivering national capacity building and development, so please maintain the minor modification we made. And that's it for 29. Thank you.
Sorry, Algeria, could you come on the modification you want to be reflected on D? So that we can capture it. Microphone to Algeria, please.
Okay, so the minor modification was to add always technology transfer and technology development. So development is missing. On the 29D, add capacity building and development, and also technology transfer, add development. So those are what Africa would like to maintain as language for 29 para. Thank you.
Okay, that's clear. I know
Said regarding C, achieving equity in research relationship. I have raised this issue last night, and I'm still raising it because it doesn't mean anything to me. It is impossible to achieve equity in research. I mean, you know, what kind of equity in research relationship? It needs either clarification or market for further discussion to save time. Thank you.
Thank you, Egypt. I now give the floor to Switzerland, followed by UK. Switzerland.
Thank you, Co-Chair. So in paragraph 9 for us, it's not really clear what is meant by this platform or facility for capacity development, that it is expressed that there is a need, and I also do not recall that there was an agreement on this issue. However, we agree that there should be some ways or like approaches or strategies to further facilitate capacity development and so on. And so maybe this wording could be amended that it would read, there is a need for a strategy or other approaches to facilitate capacity development and so on. And this is also linked to paragraph 35, which also speaks about this platform or facility, and therefore we also should have a reformulation there, because here we would like to explore which possibilities exist to use existing strategies and approaches for capacity development, technology transfer, and technical and scientific cooperation in the context of DSI. So these both elements go together. I think like this would make sense for us. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Switzerland. That is well noted. I now give the floor to UK, followed by Côte d'Ivoire.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. I agree with Switzerland about the need to pull paragraph 29 and 35 together on the point of facility for capacity development. And I have some comments on 35, but I'll come back to them. On 29, there's still missing a reference to sustainably using biodiversity. I think that can be quite easily addressed in 29A by it reading as follows: improving the ability to manage and conserve biodiversity, comma, and sustainably use it. Thank you, Co-Chair.
Thank you, UK. I now give the floor to Côte d'Ivoire, followed by Australia.
Merci. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I would like to support the proposal from Algeria and specifically that of Egypt as well. With regard to D and E, I think that E is not really in D, so when we add in D in terms of development and capacity building, and then the next one is building and institutional capacity, I think E is basically included in D, right? Because, again, we're talking about capacity building. I think that's the only thing that I wanted to mention at this juncture. Thank you.
Thank you. I now give the floor to Australia, followed by EU.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We would also agree with the insertion on the chapeau that Switzerland proposed. And we'd also like to, I think the proposal from the UK is a good one. However, I recall last night that I had made the intervention to say that biodiversity and sustainable use needs to be in the chapeau here because it applies to all of the things, which may make A redundant. Otherwise, we'd need to see for biodiversity, conservation and sustainable use added to points B, D and E independently, and we think that this is probably too many words, and so adding it to the chapeau in some form just relates it back to the reason why we're building all of this capacity. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. I give the floor to EU, followed by Norway, then Uganda, then we'll take stock of all the comments we have received. EU.
Thank you very much. I agree with Switzerland that there is, when you read paragraphs 29, 30, and 35, there can be some confusion, but in the end, for us, there is a logical follow-through because there is a need, and I think the Swiss proposal is a good one for a coherent strategy or for a coherent program with the high-level goals that I mentioned. And then paragraph 30 is a complement to that says that this work, that we will probably need to change that, this work on capacity building and so on should take place within the existing relevant convention frameworks. And then paragraph 35 logically says that we will discuss how we will actually use these existing frameworks in that regard. So our proposal would be to follow up from the Swiss proposal is to change the beginning of paragraph 29 in the sense of there's a need for a coherent strategy for capacity developing, technology transfer, and technical and scientific cooperation with the high-level goals of. Then to say this in paragraph 30, this work to facilitate and so on and so forth should take place within existing relevant convention frameworks. And in paragraph 35, it says the potential modalities for the implementation of the strategy mentioned in paragraph 29 should be discussed, should be further discussed. So I think that means we have the possibility to discuss how we're going to organize that work. And I think that that should then sort of be logical, how it's actually embedded in the work of existing convention structures. Thank you.
Thank you, EU, for those proposals. I now give the floor to Norway, followed by Uganda, and then Colombia, and then we'll take stock before we move to the other countries. Norway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just on 29, the need for a platform or facility for capacity development. We also think there's definitely need for capacity development and tech transfer and cooperation, but we, similar to Switzerland, the EU, we're not sure if we need a specific body to do that, but rather rely on existing frameworks. But we see that there's probably no consensus on this because some has suggested a platform or facility, so this could be a matter for further discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. Give the floor to Uganda.
Thank you, Co-Chair. We welcome the the amendment made by Switzerland, and we think it would be a good way to go to replace platform or facility with the strategy. And also, we want to welcome the amendments that have been made by Australia and the EU. I think we would support those amendments. Thank you, Co-Chair.
Thank you. Colombia.
Madam Co-Chair, in regards to paragraph 29, I think that some of the terms that are shown there could benefit from a little bit of context, and that context can be given in the, well, thinking about or talking about capacity development, which is, we think, like an umbrella term. So things like equity and resource relationship on its own doesn't tell you much, but when you think about it in regards to equity between laboratories, transfer of technology, access to technology, improving that, establishing mechanisms and other cooperation mechanisms between laboratories and between other organisms that could give more context to some of the terms. So it was just a small suggestion to maybe, mixing them up to give a more clear definition of what capacity development really is and what really implies. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia. I do have 3 more parties on the list, but I just wanted us to take stock. Starting with the chapeau for paragraph 29, there was a proposal by Switzerland, which has received a lot of support to improve paragraph 29. And I just want to check in the room if it's generally agreeable. And it was improved by a proposal from the EU. So maybe I'll just ask the Secretariat if you could read the proposal on paragraph 29 as it was proposed by Switzerland and improved by EU, which gained a lot of support so that we can see how to move.
Thank you very much, Chair. So the proposal for paragraph 29, as made initially by Switzerland, would change the reference to platform or facility. So as I understood their text, it would read, there is a need for a strategy or other approaches for capacity development, technology transfer, and technical and scientific cooperation with the high-level goals of. My understanding was that the EU proposal was perhaps not to include the reference to other approaches in that phrase, but I think it's more or less the same thing. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have noted the list, but I just wanted to see if there is any objection to the Swiss proposal on improving the chapeau. Egypt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I just consulted with my colleague from Jordan, and he reminded me that we have very specific strategy for capacity building and development at CAP 15/8. So there is a strategy already existing for the technology transfer, for everything that you may think about. So why you need that? Either you implement the strategy in 15/8, or you go to the original statement about the platform. We need the platform, there is no doubt about it. So the platform is a part of the strategy. Maybe the Secretariat can help us on that, 15/8.
Okay, thank you, Egypt. My understanding from the room was that whatever we decide to do in paragraph 29, whether it will be an approach or a strategy, would then be complemented by existing frameworks as is now stated in paragraph 30. So paragraph 30 already recognizes that there are some existing frameworks under the convention, including decision 15/8. that is looking at capacity building and so forth, and that whatever we develop or propose should be implemented within the existing framework, just like you have rightly said. So to go back on the initial question, with this understanding, then would you still, okay. Yeah, I see nodding. I have Brazil. You want to comment on the same? All right, Brazil.
Thank you, Chair. We'd just like to support the comment made by Egypt. I think we don't need actually a strategy. We already have a strategy. We try to find out where exactly this proposal came from. I understand that some of the discussions in the informal consultations you had mentioned the importance, the need for platforms in general, not on a platform. And I think this should be the focus. Because, why I mentioned this? Because I'm going to make a comment on paragraph 30, because I think that they are connected, that has been mentioned before. From our point of view, the goal should be on the implementation of the relevant obligations on technical and scientific cooperation and technology transfer of the Convention and the Nagoya Protocol. This should be our focus, not whether the work to facilitate capacity building should take place within the existing relevant conventions. I mean, we can have this work within the existing frameworks. We can create new frameworks. There's additional work that can be done outside those frameworks that would be mutually supportive. So we would favor a more retaining the platform element rather than strategy, and maybe even replacing the platforms, saying that we are not highlighting just one possibility. And we would like to propose text on paragraph 30 to make clear that our understanding in this regard, which is, if you allow me, I could read it, the text proposed for paragraph 30. And hopefully these two together would make sense for all parties. Can I read the text for paragraph 30? That would read, the work to facilitate capacity building and development and technology transfer on digital sequence information on genetic resources should contribute to the implementation of the relevant obligations on technical and scientific cooperation and technology transfer. Articles, and then you open Articles 16 and 18 of CBD and Articles 22 and 23 of the Nagoya Protocol. And the rest would follow, read the same, including Decision 15/8 and so on. So I'll read it again. The work to facilitate capacity building and development and technology transfer on DSI on genetic resources should contribute to the implementation of the relevant obligations on technical and scientific cooperation and technology transfer, Articles 16 and 18 of CBD and Articles 22 and 23 of the Nagoya Protocol, including Decision 15/A of the Conference of the Parties, and so on. I hope that was clear. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brazil. So in your intervention, you prefer retaining the mention of platform and not replacing with strategy as was suggested by Switzerland. Okay. Is there any party who wants to intervene on this issue of the opening paragraph of 29? Okay, I see the EU.
Thank you, Co-Chair, and thank you very much to the Brazilian colleague for his proposals. I think that the idea of referring to a multitude of entities in that sense is helpful. And I think it could be very well combined with elements of the proposed changes to the chapeau of paragraph 30. I think that the main problem I have in the Brazilian proposal is the reference to articles of the Nagoya Protocol, since we have clearly agreed in 15.9 that we stay away from the discussion on whether, when we talk about DSAI, we're talking about applicability of the Nagoya Protocol. And I think that that addition is not helpful in that regard. I think that from my perspective, we could, however, work with the part of the proposal of the Brazilian colleague. And I think the changes in the purport of paragraph 29 could be also rolled over into the paragraph 35 for further discussion by actually also using a sort of the plural there. So I think that that could be a package that I could think we could work on. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. On that, from what I'm getting on the floor, perhaps we could take paragraph 29 and 35 as part of further work to find more common understanding. I think the major issue is whether we are talking about platform or approaches, and also the modalities. So I think maybe I'll give you a chance to think through it so that I can move maybe to other items, and then we can come back if we are able to finalize. So for 29, the comments that we have so far is on A. There is a proposal to also include sustainable use and not just talk about conservation of biodiversity, and I did not see any objection. On paragraph C, there is a proposal to either delete this paragraph because there is no clarity on what is meant, or move it to areas for further consideration. Then on paragraph D, from Algeria, is to add capacity building and development, as well as technology transfer and development, and I did not also get any objections on this one. So if we feel that we object for these to be areas of convergence and the changes, then I think you could intervene. I have seen that the IPLC have requested for the floor. I'll come back to the IPLCs, but I'll just get through a few countries and then come back to you. I know that you raised your hand some time back. So now I'll give the floor to Algeria, followed by Argentina.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. So thank you for moving those 29 and 30 to the element for further discussion. I would like to suggest to capture research in para 29, as it wasn't, I am not sure if it wasn't captured in para 28 as suggested by Philippine. I didn't hear that. I just would like to confirm with you. So national agencies and institutions, we agreed that research could have more focus on research institution that can go with criteria of para 9 and 10 of the decision 15 and 15, yeah, 9, 15, 15, 9, sorry. So if it's not captured here, I would like that research is captured somewhere. Thank you.
Yeah, the issue of research was captured in paragraph 28, and there was no objection at that time. So I hope that serves your concern. I give the floor now to Argentina, followed by India.
Gracias. Thank you very much, Chair. Pertaining to paragraph 29, I'm in agreement with the reference to add in A and sustainable use. Now, pertaining to B, and bearing in mind paragraph 28, I would like to add the reference to, in particular, between developed and developing countries, so that the reference to closing the gap is clearer. Now, pertaining to C, I understand the concerns raised by some. I'd like to propose a suggested text which might capture some of the interests that were raised. In English now.
Collaboration between developed and developing countries. Gracias.
Thank you.
Sorry, Argentina, could you repeat your last proposal for C? Mike to Argentina.
Fostering research collaboration between developed and developing countries.
Okay, so the proposal is to
replace C with this new text.
Okay.
Since there is no consensus on what achieving equity means.
All right. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. I now give the floor to India, then Colombia.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Now I would like to add a point. Yesterday, I have given this point. Either it can be part of B or it can be separate also. Creation and development of national database on DSI in the long term. So that India proposed in the last contact group meeting, and for 29 at the end, I'm suggesting this thing: the capacity building initiatives to be adapted and tailored to the needs of each country, taking into the account the needs of the parties as well as IPLCs.
Okay, India, just to cross-check, your first proposal is to list as a subpara under 29 the creation of databases?
Yeah, national database.
National databases. And then the last proposal, could you repeat where you want it to be placed and what exactly the contents are?
Yeah, this wording can, with this the paragraph can end. It can be at the end of the paragraph. The capacity building initiatives to be adapted and tailored to the needs of each country, taking into account the needs of the countries, IPLCs also, because for different countries there may be different needs. Ultimately, it is to be tailored to the needs. That is our proposal. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, India. Then would you want that to be under 28 or 29? Sorry, I wasn't clear.
Okay, I feel it should be under 29 only.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
We have captured. I give the floor to Colombia, then Burkina Faso.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. I just want.
Speaker's microphone, please.
You hear me? Oh, thank you. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. I just wanted to comment that we fully support the statement by Brazil and adding the text suggested by Argentina, as well as some of the concerns shown by some of the developing countries. We should focus on the implementation of the tools that could work and that could benefit, that could benefit in this particular environment. We have much to learn from them, so we see no reason to not implementing or to not taking them into account. Thank you.
Thank you, Colombia. I give the floor to Burkina Faso.
Okay.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. This is just to support the idea of creating the national database, and also in 29A, we should take into account the 3 objectives in the convention. At this level, we should also add the equitable benefit sharing of DSI. This objective underpins the objectives which have underpinned all our discussions here. Thank you.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. Parties, with your indulgence, I would like to give the floor to the IPLCs. They had raised their hand, I think, on point 28, and I think maybe it's time to give them a chance, and then we'll move on to parties with your indentures, please. IPLCs.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. It's been a little bit of puppies and prickles back here. We're unsure of what the rules of procedure are. We know it's under the control of the co-chair, but in practice in the past, we've been able to intervene as long as we're disciplined all the way through the CRPs. We understand the L documents are under the control of the parties. But we wanted to comment on 23A and 28D. We believe that in 23A, simply referring to the needs of IPLCs is not sufficient. The decision should recognize the level of funding needed for IPLCs to continue to contribute to the high levels of biodiversity they provide to the entire world, as noted in the IPBES Global Assessment. So we propose the following language. The needs of Indigenous peoples and local communities, women and youth, taking into account their major contributions to the conservation and sustainable use of biological diversity. And again, we are concerned we're just appearing as one entity in the list. In C, non-monetary benefits, 28D, I believe we have self-identified, so it would read, the self-identified needs of Indigenous peoples and local communities, and then we would add women and youth. And we hope we can get party support for these recommendations. Thank you.
Just give us a minute. Sorry, just some ground rules discussion. So before we had our short minute break, we had an intervention from the IPLCs. I just want to check, is there any party support? Australia and Colombia and Brazil. Okay, thank you. So we'll continue on paragraph 29. We're getting quite good interventions to improve the text. I now give the floor to Norway and then Australia. Norway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I had a question on para 30, where Brazil had a very, very helpful suggestion. But I realized they suggested use the word obligations. And from a legal perspective, we might want to use a different term than obligations, because the meeting of the parties doesn't really decide on legalities as such. So maybe use a different word, I would suggest, than obligations. Thank you. And then I had a question to India, to their suggestion to include national databases. Would these databases then be open access? Thank you.
Thank you. India. Oh, okay. They'll come back. I think they just temporarily went out. And I don't know, for the question for Brazil, was it a suggestion or you wanted clarification from Brazil? Norway. Mike to Norway.
Sorry, I forgot to push the button. I like the thrust of Brazil's proposal. I am suggesting to use a different concept than obligations that I think Brazil used, because the COP, the meeting of the parties under the convention, doesn't decide on legally binding decisions, right? So for me, obligations suggest that it's something legally binding, which wouldn't, to me, make sense in this context. Thank you.
Okay, Norway, that is noted. I think we'll come back to the Brazilian proposal soon. I now give the floor to Australia, then Algeria.
Thank you, Co-Chair. On paragraph 29, we think that Argentina's proposal on C, instead of equity and research relationships, to foster collaboration between developed and developing countries is a lovely solution to that, so we would support that. I would just add to your list of summary before that we are looking for a link back to biodiversity conservation and sustainable use in the chapeau. I can provide some text. So literally we would just put after scientific cooperation for biodiversity and sustainable use, comma, with the high level goals of, and the rest is how it ends up. On India's proposal, these are areas of convergence, and I'm not sure that we've had enough discussion on the potential for capacity building for the creation of national databases. And I think Norway's question to India indicates this, and so we wouldn't include it in the areas of convergence, but perhaps as a discussion to be had along the way for this group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, Australia. And I think your proposal is to include sustainable use, conservation and sustainable use in the chapeau, rather than repeat it out throughout all the sub-paragraphs. And I think if parties have an objection to this, they can take the floor. Otherwise, I think it's a helpful suggestion to move us forward. And also, you were supporting Argentina's proposal of replacing C with fostering relationships between developed and developing countries. So I'll now move to Algeria and Egypt, and also ask you if you could comment on the proposals that have been made to refine the text by others as well. Thank you, Algeria.
Okay, thank you, Madam. I will just start with the part 35. Regarding the modalities of the capacity sharing platform or facility. So in our understanding, capacity sharing and capacity building are quite different. So capacity sharing is not acceptable for us. Capacity building and development is what we advocate for. We think that we must be careful of semantic and choices of words. And I will stop there and come back later. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Algeria. I give the floor to Egypt, followed by Argentina.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The issue raised by our colleague from India regarding the national database, as far as I understand, the way how he presented, he looked at it in terms of the capacity development initiative. Actually, capacity development initiative, they are doing this. They are helping many, many countries at all different levels, whether it is for the database or for sharing experience and whatever, etc. So let us focus on the main issue here, which is actually we want, as Brazil said, to contribute toward implementation of the strategy approved 15/8. This is very clear. The issue about changing 28 to 29C into foster cooperation or scientific cooperation between developed and developing countries doesn't make sense to us at all. Because here, as I said, when we raise this issue, we talked about what does it mean achieving equity? Is it possible to achieve equity? Is it possible to get rich people and poor people together and say you are equal and everything, we share the whole things? No, it doesn't make sense at all. And here, as I said, we asked for clarification. What does it mean, equity in research relationships? Since we didn't get any reasonable understanding of this, so we asked to move it to somewhere else. But fostering cooperation or scientific cooperation, it's already happening. What else? Well, you know, what value added? It is already existing now. We want to implement what we have agreed in Montreal. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll have Argentina, then United Kingdom.
Gracias.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I am delighted that some people have favourably supported my proposal, but it wasn't ambitious enough for others, which is a shame. But in this case, I'd like to refer to the proposal made by Brazil on the text for paragraph 30, just to express my support to the new text which has been proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll have UK, then Australia, then academic and research, and then we'll conclude on paragraph 29 in that order. So, UK.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. First, we can support Australia's suggestion to include sustainable use in the chapeau. And then my comment is in relation to paragraph 30 and specific to the related paragraph 35, seeing that comments have already been taken on that. Given that paragraph 30 references the regional centres that are established in paragraph 26 of decision 15/8, it appears to us that that we could probably delete paragraph 35 here, actually. The modalities of these regional centres will be developed through the SBI, as agreed in paragraph 27 of the capacity building decision, and therefore for consideration by the COP. What we might like to discuss here, however, is how to embed the work related to digital sequence information within the work of those regional centres. So I think that would be a way of perhaps streamlining the paragraphs here, and also making use of the regional centres that are already established elsewhere, rather than setting up anything new. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, UK. I think once we conclude paragraph 29, we'll go into the discussion for paragraph 30, because we got a lot of suggestions there, and we just want to be able to focus the discussion, but we have captured that proposal. I'll have Australia, then I see there are two parties who want to intervene on paragraph 29. Okay, I just wanted us to finalize paragraph 29, and then if the interventions are for the other paragraphs, then we'll move there. So only those parties that want to intervene on paragraph 29, I'll take your interventions and then we'll move. So I'll have Australia, Indonesia, and then the academia and research. And this will be the last interventions for paragraph 29. Australia.
Thank you, Chair, and my apologies for asking for the floor again, but my boss behind me reminded me that I forgot something. The new text proposed by India on capacity building issues to be adopted and tailored to the needs of each country, we believe that that's actually covered in D, and it's probably not necessary. Identifying national priorities for capacity building will do this, and we have the needs basis in paragraph 28. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia. I'll now have Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. So I should only comment on 29 for the time being?
Yes, for now, and then we'll move to
okay.
them. Yeah.
Okay. In that case, our comment is minor. It's just that we prefer to maintain platform or facility in the SHAPO of 29. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The last speaker on paragraph 29 will be academia and research.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. And sorry, this is actually a relic from 28. I'd had my hand up, but it got overlooked at the time. I just wanted to express support for Brazil's deletion of Japan's insertion under 28E of the words implementing biodiversity conservation. The colleague from Brazil did not provide a particular justification, and I wanted to offer one. The international members of the DSI scientific network use DSI for a lot of purposes, and we certainly see ourselves as stakeholders responsible for delivering monetary benefits, but we don't use DSI just for biodiversity conservation. We use it for public health, for food security, for sustainable development, for renewable energy, for climate change, et cetera. And so limiting ourselves to DSI non-monetary benefit sharing for biodiversity conservation would just be a real shame.
All right, thanks. I think for paragraph 28E, we had agreed to move it to areas for further consideration unless Japan will accept the proposed deletion by Brazil and what you have just indicated. So hopefully they can come back to us later on if there is any change. Otherwise, it's still there, but in the areas for further consideration. So going back to paragraph, okay, I see Japan wants to respond. Japan?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Japan is happy to follow the consensus of this room. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Japan. And with that, we'll return it to the areas of convergence because there is now some kind of agreement on that. Thank you, Japan. On paragraph 29, therefore, these are the changes and the interventions that have been made for 29. There has been a proposal to include conservation and sustainable use, which has had no objection. The only issue that is outstanding is whether we use platforms, approaches, or facilities. So for that reason, we had said if there's no agreement or convergence, we would consider this as an issue for further consideration. For paragraph 29C, there was a proposal by Argentina on replacing that paragraph with a new wording, which I think has not received support from other parties, so we'll still push it down to areas for further consideration, unless there will be some flexibility from the parties that feel strongly about this paragraph. With regards to paragraph, the proposal that was made by India on looking at country priorities with regards to capacity needs, there was a proposal by Australia that maybe this issue is already covered in paragraph E, and also parts of paragraph D, which is talking about looking at the needs. And therefore, India, if you would consider thinking whether this proposal would be well covered in D and parts of 28, then I think maybe we could move forward without having the new additional paragraph. And The other issue that was on paragraph D was a proposal, on paragraph 29 was a proposal by India with regards to databases, creation of databases, which we feel that based on the interventions in the room, it should be moved to areas of further discussion because there was no convergence on that. Otherwise, the rest of the paragraphs, there was no objection, and we'll take it that those are potential areas for convergence. So I would like to check if this is agreeable and as a way of moving forward, and then we'll move to paragraph 30 to look at the Brazilian proposal and also elements that were commented on by other parties to see how we can move forward on that paragraph. So is there anyone who wants to respond to my summary of how we have dealt with paragraph 29? I see Côte d'Ivoire.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chair. I am coming back to the concern that I voiced. I believe that E is covered by D, and I don't think that that it's not, because when we say to identify the capacity building needs, we do it at an individual level, we do it in a systemic level, and we do it at an institutional level. So I don't know why it's isolated there. Or is it to stress that in particular? Thank you very much.
Thanks, Côte d'Ivoire. Just to make sure I got you clear, there was no intervention on paragraph E initially. So your proposal is to treat it as if it's already covered in D, and therefore not have paragraph E, maybe just to get you clearly. So you are proposing deletion of paragraph E. Okay, maybe if you can take the floor and just give clarification.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Yes, that's what I was trying to explain. So, when I'm asked to explain my needs, I'm in an administration, so I look at my level. Do I have needs? Does the organization in which I'm working have needs? That's an institutional level. And then, does the system have needs? That's a systemic level. And all of that has to be in the identification of needs. So then why was one level isolated? Because for me, it should be all integrated. Thank you.
Thank you, Côte d'Ivoire. That's understood. So I now have EU, then India, and we'll close and move to the next level because I think we have quite a lot of work ahead. And I thought this was one of the areas where we would easily find convergence, but I see that there are still some outstanding issues. EU, then India.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Just to make one reflection, to me, the current status of the text is as clear as mud. I don't understand where we are, and I'm not clear which changes are accepted and which changes are deleted. And that's, I would like to get a clarification from both co-chairs. So in an initial remark, I understood that there would be a new text tomorrow morning. I think that the question is then the text would actually be based on discussions here, but I think we are not making extremely clear conclusions on some of the things that we're discussing. And since the changes that are made are multiple, very often contradictory, I think it is for some of us becoming increasingly challenging to keep track. My notes are getting very long and they're sometimes contradictory. So I think at this time of the day, it would actually be quite helpful to understand what your plans are until 6 o'clock, what are the plans for the evening, and what are the plans for tomorrow in that regard, because I think time is running out and we are currently discussing as if we were at the beginning of our conversation, if I may raise my slight concern in that regard. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. We'll come back to you with a response. I'll now give the floor to India, followed by Norway.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Just a clarification with regard to this, creation of a database at country level. There was some, queries whether it will be open access or like that. Yesterday in the contact group also, we made it clear, because ultimately it will be connected to the, international level network. So the basic objective and idea is it's a open database network only. Only thing is, in future it will facilitate, in case of tracking and tracing. That is the objective, and this need not be a separate point also. It can be part of B, 29B, because that covers closing gap in capacity to generate, access, use, analyze, and store digital sequence, and creation of databases. So that is the clarification we wanted to give. Thank you very much for the floor. Thank you.
Thank you, India. The final speaker is Norway, and then we'll move with a clear summary of what has been agreed on this paragraph. Norway.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I want to thank India for the explanation. And as I understand from the explanation, the national databases suggested will be consistent with open access to data as phrased in the principles 9F. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Norway. So with regards to this paragraph, just to give clarification on the direction, you are right. It was a simple paragraph with high-level issues when it started, and a lot of issues have been provided from the interventions to improve certain elements of the paragraphs that are under convergence. So in the summary now, we have a number of areas where we have seen that there is no convergence. We'll return them in the document that will be revised to reflect what has been intervened here. And for those areas where we have seen that there is convergence, and also there was no objection in some of the elements that were proposed for their improvement, we'll take it that they are still appearing as areas of potential convergence in the document. So we are hoping to produce a revised version of the document based on what we have gathered today, because a lot of other issues have really improved some of the areas of convergence, but also some of the areas of convergence that were initially proposed have been moved to the areas where there is a need for further work. So for paragraph 29, I think in the summary that I made, I indicated which components of that paragraph contains issues that should be for further work, including the chapeau, because of some of the elements that need to be clarified. And in the sub-paragraphs, there were quite a number of areas where we felt there was convergence. So that's the way moving forward. Like we have indicated, we will try to get through the document as far as we can, just to make sure that we have touched on all the important elements to help us come up with a revised document that reflects what is being discussed today. And also, like indicated area, we are planning to have a contact group this evening to discuss further intersessional work, how we intend to carry out further intersessional work, which will also deal on the areas, how we address the areas for further work. So I hope that is clear for now in terms of where we are and where we are going, but I know that maybe it's difficult to keep track at the moment in what is where and which areas we have agreed, but we hope that when the paper is out, we'll have all clarity in terms of the summary of what came out today. So with that, I'll move to paragraph 30, and we'll start with the, because we have had some discussion on paragraph 30, I just wanted the Secretariat to read out the proposal by Brazil on this paragraph, and also see if it takes into account some of the comments that were made by the UK, and then we'll take it to the floor to see if people want to go along with the revised paragraph. Secretariat.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Yes, so the proposal earlier from Brazil for the text, for the full text of paragraph 30 would be for the paragraph to read as follows: the work to facilitate capacity building and development and technology transfer on digital sequence information on genetic resources should contribute to the implementation of the relevant obligations on technical and scientific cooperation and technology transfer, parentheses, Articles 16 and 18 of the Convention and Articles 22 and 23 of the Nagoya Protocol, close parentheses, including Decision 15/8 of the Conference of the Parties on Capacity Building and Development and Technical and Scientific Cooperation, needs assessments, national biodiversity strategies and action plans, and the regional or sub-regional and technical and scientific support centers. There were a few additional proposals by other parties to comment on or make amendments to the Brazilian proposal, but that was the proposal as read by Brazil. Thank you.
Thank you. I see Brazil would like to clarify.
Thank you, Chair. Just to briefly respond to my colleague from Norway concerning the word obligation. I don't want to get into legalese here. It's a difficult ground, and also reminds me that I was once a lawyer. I'm so glad those days are gone. So I don't want to bore people with legalese, but just to highlight that, that it's a highly debatable issue, has been under scrutiny by the International Law Commission for many years. It's subject of documents such as the draft conclusions on subsequent agreements, the subsequent practice in relation to the interpretation of treaties. So, I mean, it's a debatable issue. We should not get into the ground. I think it would be useful. But I would appeal not to parties not to be too scared of the word obligation. It's used no less than 10 times in the convention itself. If you take a very common definition of obligation, for instance, the Cambridge Dictionary says something that a person feels morally or legally forced to do. So either morally or legally, you're going to do that. So if you're going to do that, it's an obligation. We don't need to discuss if it's legal or moral or anything, but it's clear. And if you take a look at the articles of the convention that were mentioned by my proposal, for instance, Article 18, it uses several times the verb shall. So it's clear that we're talking about obligations in whatever sense one wants to interpret obligations. So I would kindly ask Norway to please keep the reference to obligations. That would be my comment at this moment. We can discuss some further issues concerning other parties' proposal if needs be. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll have EU followed by Togo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And Just to say that I already commented on the Brazilian proposal, as you remember, and I think that the proposal is sort of making this much more heavy and cumbersome, and as you rightly said, we shouldn't get into a legal discussion like him. I used to be an advisor, a legal advisor in the Ministry for Foreign Affairs sometime, and I think when we speak about obligations in the context of the implementation of a multilateral environmental agreement, there are several issues that come to the fore. So I think that we could actually circumvent that one by saying should contribute to the implementation of relevant provisions on technical cooperation and transfer of technology in the CBD and the implementation of Decision 15.8, and then I'm not quite clear what the rest of the language was. I think that I would just ask for clarification whether the rest of the text of paragraph 30, which actually says should take place within the existing relevant convention frameworks and so on, remains, or whether the Brazilian proposal would imply that the remainder of the text would be deleted. So I think that wasn't clear from when he read it out, because for us the text that those activities should take place within the existing relevant convention frameworks are quite important in the context of discussion here, because they're related to the further consideration that we will make linked to the parts of paragraph 29 that might be moved, as you said, co-chair, to the matters for further consideration and the further work we would do on paragraph 35. So I think not 100% clear, but I think the references to obligations under CBD and Nagoya Protocol for us in the context of this paragraph is not making things easier, and we're not comfortable with that. Thank you.
Thank you, EU, and I would like to urge Brazil to reflect on that proposal by EU to, instead of obligations, to say should complement to the relevant provisions, so that maybe we could find a language that we could agree on and move forward. Do you want to respond? Yes, Brazil?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, in the spirit of compromise, we could go with the European proposal in regards to mention provisions instead of obligations. But we do not see the added value of our proposal didn't include the mention to existing relevant convention frameworks. We made a point that we want to be broad, that certainly the convention frameworks are important, but we don't see the added value of mentioning them in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you. So if I get you correctly, you would be comfortable with the EU proposal, but then maintaining the rest of the paragraph as you had proposed without existing relevant conventions. And maybe EU would reflect on that, and we could maybe have a paragraph that reflects the different views. I'll give the floor to Togo and then Norway, and hopefully maybe EU could come back on what Brazil has indicated, and then maybe we could move to other parts of the paragraphs. So Togo and then Norway.
Merci, Madame.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. I think that I can simplify what Brazil has proposed, but I agree with the EU, because for me, paragraph 30, first of all, identifies the relevant and existing frameworks that have been developed where we can work for capacity building in DSI. And I think that this is an important aspect which is underscored because the proposals of Brazil touches on that. So while I support that rewording that was initially proposed, we also wanted to add that the paragraph in here refers to Decision 15.8, and that it is Decision 15.8 in its preamble, which quotes Decision 15.9, if you understand. So 15.8 refers to 15.9. By recognizing the need to support the access to DSI and the production and use of its information by capacity building and scientific cooperation, etc. So let's not forget that 59 was actually enshrined in 4.6 on DSI. So that means that in terms of existing frameworks, we should also have references in order to be coherent, because the work that will be done under 59 would eventually, in one way or another, somehow contribute to 4.6. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see that paragraph 30 was one of the most straightforward paragraphs, but I see it's getting a little complicated. And I think the issues that outstanding are really issues that can easily be resolved. So I think for this paragraph, maybe in the corridors, EU and Brazil, you could find a common language, because I really see that we could be able to find areas of convergence on this paragraph. And I think for now, I would want to park it there, knowing that there will be an opportunity. EU, final solution. Mike to EU.
Thank you. If I understood Brazil correctly, and just to introduce the discussion, Brazil would not like to limit the work on capacity building and development to existing convention frameworks, but wants to open it to work beyond those frameworks in that regard. But certainly I would understand that Brazil wouldn't object to work continuing in the context of existing relevant frameworks on those issues. In the understanding of your ruling that the bulk of paragraph 29 with regard to the discussion of new platforms and facilities is moved to the matters for further discussion, and that the modalities for that would be discussed there, maybe with a slight tweak to paragraph 30, we could actually solve it and say, and remove the article "the" at the beginning of paragraph 30 and say, further work to facilitate capacity building and development and technology transfer on DSI and genetic resources that contributes to the implementation of relevant provisions on technical cooperation and tech transfer under CBD, including decision 15/8, should take place within existing relevant convention frameworks and so on and so forth. So that means, in that sense, we have convergence, that work under CBD will continue, and we will discuss what is outside of that one, including the matter of further platforms and facilities under the matters for further work. It's just for your consideration in that sense. Thank you.
Thank you. EU, could you repeat the proposal?
Thank you. Paragraph 30 would start. Further work to facilitate capacity building and development and technology transfer on DSI on genetic resources will continue and contribute to the implementation of the relevant provisions on technical cooperation and tech transfer under the Convention for Biological Diversity. This work should take place within existing relevant convention frameworks, and then it just continues on until the end of the current text. Thank you.
Thank you. Brazil.
Thank you, Chair, and thank the European Union for the effort to move forward. But unfortunately, we feel that our concerns are still not addressed, and I try to explain a little further why is that. So, first, as we said, we still think that confining this work to the existing relevant conventional frameworks is still very restrictive. We do not want to in any way send a signal that there should be other possibilities. And at the same time, we're not quite sure also what we're talking about when we're talking about the relevant conventional frameworks. Is the global biodiversity framework, for instance? I'm not sure. I think this language is also a bit vague. The added mention to continued, we also think it's not useful because it gives the impression that we have a significant work of being done and just continue as things as usual, and it's not the case. We need to significantly increase the amount of work in this regard. We do not continue on the rhythm that's going on. The rhythm is going on is far from adequate. What should be to implement the provisions. So we don't see the added value of continue to. Didn't quite understand that. So our suggestion is just to delete the existing. We're not saying that we will ignore existing conventional frameworks, but we will not say that we will restrict this work to existing conventional frameworks. And we will also not try to define exactly, because then we get into footnotes saying conventional, relevant frameworks is that and that and that. I don't think that it's useful. That's the whole idea of just deleting mentions to conventional frameworks. If we are mentioning the articles of the convention, it's clear that the convention is the main referencing point. We do not need further elements. I hope these comments are useful. Thank you.
Thank you. On paragraph 30, I'll have Indonesia, UK, Egypt, Togo, then we'll close, and then I'll make proposals for way forward. Indonesia.
Thank you, Madam Chair. On paragraph 30, we are supporting the original proposal of Brazil. We don't believe that by using the term obligation is an issue, because we believe that all articles under CBD are our obligations. But of course, each article may have different strength and how the obligations are. Some are only encourages article, some are undertakes, some are shall articles. So it would refer to each particular article. So I don't think there's an issue to the original Brazil proposal. So we propose to use the original Brazil proposal for the colleagues' consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. UK, then Egypt.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. So understanding that the proposal still is to keep the text towards the end of that paragraph on 15/8, to bring it in line with the text within decision 15/8, paragraphs 25 and 26, it would be helpful to add, so it would say, and the regional and/or sub-regional technical and scientific cooperation support centres. So that's the addition of and in terms of and/or, and then sub-regional technical and scientific, and then add cooperation support centres. And that just brings it in line with decision 15/8. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
Thank you, UK, for aligning us to what is in the decision. I give the floor to Egypt, and the final speaker on 30 will be Togo. Egypt.
Thank you, Madam Chair. After listening to all what is already said now, we have two options. Either we take this into further consideration, because this has taken almost more than an hour now, or they go back to original text, especially that one that's provided by Brazil, because it makes sense. I mean, the whole idea about paragraph 3 is to get capacity building or capacity development to contribute toward what we have, this kind of strategy, very specific strategy on capacity building and development. It's just, it should be within the same framework that we are talking about. I think Brazilian proposal is more realistic rather than anything else. Thank you.
Thank you. Egypt, Togo.
Merci.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think in paragraph 29, we'd identified a certain number of needs or criteria for capacity building. But in 30, it tries to identify the framework for capacity building for DSI. Therefore, the reminder of this existent framework is important. Take into account the comments from EU, the decision 59 has been enshrined in the Nagoya Protocol. Therefore, this framework is also an opportunity to strengthen capacity building in DSI. Thank you.
Thank you, Togo. Japan, you want to intervene on 30?
Thank you, Madam Chair. On paragraph 30, we support the comment made by the EU, very accurate and precise. Thank you.
Thank you. So we'll move out of paragraph 30. For now, we'll put it under the areas for further discussion, but with a request for Brazil, EU, and others that are interested in this paragraph, in the corridors, to at least maybe try to find some common areas, because this is one of the paragraphs where we feel that we could find areas of convergence. But if we don't have any report on it, we'll consider it to be under the areas for further discussion. Next, we go to paragraphs 31, 32, and 33. If there are any objections that these are areas of convergence, but if there are no objections, I think we could now just move to the next cluster, which is cluster D. So I'll take them together, 31, 32, 33, and the rest of the paragraphs, just if there are objections on the elements. Otherwise, we'll move to paragraph D. We had already taken some suggested text earlier on paragraph, on the other paragraphs, which have been included specifically on the elements for further work. But for the paragraphs 31, 32, 33, if there are any areas of objections, quickly, and then we'll see how to move forward. Thank you. Okay, I'm just being reminded that there is a slight correction for paragraph 32 that the Secretariat wants to note, so I'll give the floor to the Secretariat.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. So yes, in paragraph 32, when we were rereading this this morning, we realized that the word project appears twice, but we believe that should be replaced by the word product. So it should be product, not project. And then the first 2+ lines of the paragraph would read, there are many ways in which non-monetary benefits are already being shared, including but not limited to making the product available in the public domain and the licensing of products free of charge, and then the rest continues as it is. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. I'll give the floor to Argentina, followed by Brazil.
Gracias. Thank you very much, Madam Chair. As I recall on the discussions on trigger points in Cluster A, I mentioned that we would accept to strike out the use of DSI as a trigger point under the agreement that this point would be included under non-monetary benefit sharing, including the mention that this would be a trigger point for non-monetary benefit sharing. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. I'll now give the floor to Brazil, then Algeria. Brazil? Oh, please give the mic to Brazil. Microphone to Brazil, please.
Hello, thanks. If you take a global look at section C, it starts with a criteria for share of non-monetary benefits, and then we have a list of possible criteria. And then in paragraph 29, we have a list of goals. And I mentioned this because I think it would be useful to have another list, which is missing here, and which we have provided in our intervention, because there is a list of possible alternatives on non-monetary benefit sharing. In our intervention yesterday, we had a quite long list of options. In paragraph 32, I think we are dealing with actually two different things here. One is that, if I'm not mistaken, there's one message saying there are many ways in which non-monetary benefits are being shared already, and the future sharing of non-monetary benefits should take into account lessons learned from those experiences. That's one idea, and I think this idea functions if it's complete. And this idea is, again, is common sense, that the further work should take into account the work that already exists. Not to repeat mistakes, to learn with the lessons. So that's why that was the reason why we did not support the Japanese proposal. So our proposal will be to rephrase paragraph 32 just to keep this idea. And we would remove the mentions to including but limited to making the project available, because these are examples of non-monetary benefits. And we would remove this from this paragraph 32, and then we could have another paragraph saying, as we proposed yesterday, non-monetary benefits could share inter alia by 1, licensing products free of charge, B, making the product available in public domain, and so on. And we can provide a list of options. In the same vein of the other articles, just as the other articles provided a list of criteria and then a list of goals, we could have an article providing a list of options on how non-monetary benefit sharing could be made. That would be our main suggestion. I can read you a proposal what this paragraph could read, and I also had a proposal in 33, which is to delete the 33, because we are not familiar with this particular aid doc. We do not think that this particular document should mention one particular document with this level of detail. No, I think we are not very comfortable. We feel bound by the conclusions of an aid tag that we are not fully familiar with this. We would prefer to delete this. We do not see much added value on that. I think it could, maybe the general idea behind 33 would be already covered in paragraph 32 with the idea that we should take into account the lessons learned from those experiences, and that would include eventually lessons that were mentioned in that A tag, but we would feel more comfortable deleting it. So if you want me to, I can read a list of other options of non-monetary benefits. I have done so already during my intervention, but I can do that again if you want. So.
Yeah, Brazil, I think you indeed have read out the list, and we will just look back at what was captured earlier. We get that your proposal is to have a separate paragraph that lists all the options for non-monetary benefit sharing as a separate paragraph, and then that for 32 you would want to delete from including up to free of charge, and then have a shorter sentence that says there are many ways in which non-monetary benefits are already being shared, and the future sharing of non-monetary benefits should take into account lessons learned from those experiences. And then the part that is in between should be covered in the paragraph we are proposing that is going to list all of the examples. And for 33, you are proposing deletion. So I'll get the next countries, and I would also ask you to reflect on the proposals that have been made by Brazil. I'll have Algeria, then EU, then Australia.
Mike, thank you. So, Madam Co-Chair, I'm not speaking on Algeria, I'm speaking on behalf of Africa. So regarding, I will intervene on para 35. South Africa don't agree with Yuki proposition to delete para 35. So instead, yeah, we're giving you a hard time, but anyway. So instead, we request more possibilities, to consider more possibilities of, so we are coming back. So possibility for platform for capacity building and technology transfer as non-monetary benefit sharing obligation, including through using regional platforms. That is our suggestion. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
Thank you, Algeria, EU, then Australia, then Norway.
Thank you very much. Running through the issues as we have them, I think that the deletions, for us, paragraph 32, with some of the deletions could be okay. I think we could live with the text that says that there are many ways in which non-monetary benefits are already being shared, and the future sharing of non-monetary benefits should take into account lessons learned from these experiences. I think that makes sense. We had no problem with the text that was in the middle suggested for deletion by Japan and Brazil, but we still think that the paragraph makes sense even without that. We are highly interested in further discussing the list of options for non-monetary benefit sharing of issues proposed by Brazil, and suggest that that moves directly to the elements on which there is need for further discussion, because this list is unknown to us. So how we can obviously not have a convergence on this one. I think that's understood. So I think that will be part of our further work. I think that we are ready to further discuss the practicalities of using DSI as a trigger point for non-monetary benefit sharing. So I think we would say that it moves as a how point to the issues for further discussion. I think that also it's very sad that this critical report by the ad hoc on the technical expert group on digital sequence information, which was one of the key documents that we had for us, and that served us very well in the run-up to COP15 and was a basis of our discussions in the discussion on DSI, is unknown to other delegates. So I think for us it is actually really impossible to not have it clearly referenced in this document. So I think we cannot agree to the deletion here. I think that it is quite important that this fundamental work that even had a lot of information on the categorization and other things is sort of sidelined, so I think it needs to stay in the discussion. On paragraph 35, I think that with moving 29 and 30 into the issues for further discussion, I think it could somehow be integrated into those two paragraphs. So the issue stays, but it will actually be discussed in the context of the broader discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. I give the floor to Australia, then Norway.
Thank you, Co-Chair. And the EU just stole my statement. No, I'm just kidding. I think that we agree with the EU that the first part of the Brazilian proposal looks good. We're happy to accept it and it can remain where it is, but the list needs to be moved down for discussion. We also would like to see 33 stay, and perhaps maybe because it does start with having a discussion on non-monetary benefits, that too can move down for further discussion. And on 35, I think the EU's got a great solution. We can move the paragraphs down and it all works together. However, I think the word that we need to change in this sentence is the potential modalities of a capacity building platform or facility rather than the, because that presupposes that we've made that decision. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Australia. Norway.
Moin Moin, Madam Co-Chair. Yeah, so as the EU and Australia, with think it's okay to simplify 32. Also no problems with the middle section. And discuss the list we can do. Regarding 33, as the EU, we find it really important to keep the reference to the ATEG, which not most, but a lot of our work is based on. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll now give the floor to the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Co-Chair. I just wanted to comment on item 33, and indeed it's a very good document, and it was very useful for preparing for the previous conversation, but there are many. It's a huge list of possible area of capacity buildings, and many of them are already incorporated. Many of them are very specific, so they are just related to the things which were actual in last year or 2 years ago or 3 years ago. It was prepared in 220. And I think the current academic and research group are much more proficient and in this case. And so maybe it's worth moving it into the points for further discussion and incorporated areas for capacity building explicitly, and maybe removing some of things which are actually obsolete already. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll have the last party on this because there seems to be a direction that we all agree to move towards. So I'll have UK, then after UK, I'll have academia and research, and then IPLC. UK.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. Like the EU and Norway and Australia, paragraph 32 and 33, we can go along with those suggestions. On paragraph 35, I think it is helpful to change the to a, given that it's not something that's set up yet, so it's not a the. But I would still caution against setting up anything new. So let's not reinvent the wheel. I think I've made this point a couple of times now. But let's look towards those regional and/or sub-regional centres which are being established under the decision 15/9 already. Thank you, Madam Co-Chair.
Thank you. Academia and research, microphone 5.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Co-Chair. A note on paragraph 33, just a consideration, number one, to support what the EU said, but also that the ADTAC goes, its utility for the current process goes actually far beyond the focus on the report in terms of capacity building recommendations. I had quite a number of requests last night after the contact group for the study on databases and traceability and the statistics that are found in there, so perhaps a recommendation to list simply all of the ADTEC formal documents in that footnote instead. Also, I wanted to congratulate the Secretariat that in advance of this meeting, they've designed a new DSI resources page on the ABS Clearinghouse that colleagues there have worked very hard on and have requested the academic sector to upload peer-reviewed publications, policy briefs, et cetera, which we have diligently done. So you might also expand this sentence to say, as well as refer to resources list on the DSI resources page and include there the CBD website that's been prepared accordingly. And just a little typo note, in ADTEC, the word expert is missing in that paragraph.
Thank you. The last speaker is IPLC.
Thank you, Madam Co-Chair. We agree with Brazil and are very happy with the idea of an open-ended list. We think we identified several things in some of our comments in the contact group that were supported by parties, but rather than really add to a long list, because of course this would be a negotiated list and indicative, we would like to put in the idea of non-monetary benefits self-identified by IPLCs and stakeholders that contribute to the conservation and sustainable use of biodiversity. And we think that would be enough of a indicator that would give us purchase when we go to negotiate the list. Thank you.
Okay, could you repeat where you want that to be included in the paragraphs and which specific paragraph?
Sorry, yes. Well, I'm not exactly sure where that list will occur, but we agree with the shortening of the other paragraph, and then wherever that list of non-monetary projects is created, we would like this to be included. Thank you.
Okay, so do we have party support for that proposal? Yeah, I see Canada. So this proposal is going to the list that was proposed by Brazil to be qualified by that proposal from the IPOCs. So I'll summarize these last paragraphs. For paragraph 32, we'll retain it under the area of convergence with the amendment made by Brazil and supported by a number of parties. For paragraph 33, we'll retain it in the document, but it will be under areas needing further discussion. For the new paragraph proposed by Brazil with a list of potential non-monetary options, it will be included in the paragraph under elements for which there is need for further discussion. Paragraph 35 and 29, as well as 30, they will be under areas for further discussion, but we'll see how they overlap, and then we could have concrete paragraphs that incorporate all of those elements. So I think this summarizes these paragraphs under capacity building, and I hope we can now move on to cluster D on governance. So I hand over to my co-chair to take us through with the remaining time that we have. Sorry, Japan, a response to the summary.
Sorry, Madam Chair. With your indulgence, would you please read out paragraph 32 again? Thank you.
Okay, so paragraph 32 will read, there are many ways in which non-monetary benefits are already being shared, and the future sharing of non-monetary benefits should take into account lessons learned from those experiences. Yes, Japan?
We accept it. Thank you very much.
Okay, Japan, I was really scared that my beautiful summary would no longer hold, so thank you very much. I hand over to my co-chair.
Thank you very much, Co-Chair. Good evening, everyone. We have a few minutes left. We're going to make good use of them. We're going to carry on with Cluster D. So just to clarify the process, we will take the very helpful discussion that we've had on clusters A, B, and C, and we will turn that around overnight into a new paper for the morning. We will start exchanging Cluster D now, but we will not publish those exchanges tomorrow morning because I don't think that in the 10 minutes we have, we will conclude Cluster D. I wish that we could conclude Cluster D in 10 minutes, but I don't think we will. So we'll start now with a view to refining them further tomorrow. So I'll start by taking comments, please, on paragraphs 36 to 39. I'd like just to remind us all, we spent several days discussing these at a high level. There was a good sense of agreement and convergence among them all. When the paper came out this morning, there was a sense from a lot of you that this was a good basis for discussion, that there was a good sense of convergence, and so I hope we can continue to engage in that spirit. So 36 to 39, over to you. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Be brief. On 37, we are able to agree with this as an area of convergence on the understanding that should the GEF be an appropriate tool recognizing that that is an area for further discussion, it would meet this criterion. So it's not new text, we just want to make it clear that we're okay with this on the understanding that the GEF, if it's an appropriate tool, it would meet this criterion. The other point that we wanted to make, but can you remind me, are we just going to 39 or should I, okay. We had suggested moving 41 up to cluster B, so. And just one final point, 15 minutes, we probably don't have time for this, but in this area of governance, we're really interested in hearing from IPs and LCs on their views on this cluster, because a lot of it relates very closely to them. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada, and we're looking forward to hearing from them as well later. Burkina Faso, you have the floor.
Okay, merci bien.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to come back to paragraph 37. Here we're talking about the Global Fund. What is this fund? Shouldn't we really clearly set this out? Also, at the end of this paragraph, that we add the following. The Convention of the Conference of the Parties, the Conference of Parties of the CBD and its protocols. I would like to suggest those additions. Thank you.
Thank you, Burkina Faso. That's very clear. European Union, you have the floor.
Thank you. As Canada, we would like to recall that it is our understanding that paragraphs 36 to 39 actually fully reflect the way the CBD and its COP are currently working with the Global Environment Facility and are planning to work with the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund. Thank you.
Thank you, EU. I see India on the list.
Thank you, Co-Chair. In para 36, we have a comment. I will just read out. The multilateral mechanism will be guided by the strategic principles set out in Decision 59. It is written by the parties to the convention, blah, 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 set out in paragraphs 9 and 10 of the decision. Whereas there are other principles which are laid out in 15.9, so that are also to be considered and that should be part of that. So we propose that, I will read again from the start. The multilateral mechanism will be guided by strategic principles set out in Decision 15.9, adopted by Conference of Parties to the Convention on Biological Diversity. So let us make it full rather than referring only to the 9 and 10, because here there are other principles that is there in the text. That is for paragraph 36 and for 39. May I go ahead? Chair?
Please, yes, please.
Okay. For 39, because sometimes I may be very fast and you may ask me to repeat, so, okay. In case of 39, the governing body of the fund should include party representatives. We are further adding that. Selected in a manner so as to provide fair representation to the developing countries, developing and countries with mega diversity or mega diverse biological resources. That's all for the paragraphs from 36 to 39. Thank you.
Thank you very much, India. That's very helpful. Can I ask you for some clarification on both, if that's okay? So on 36, is your proposal to delete the wording set out in paragraphs 9 and 10? I think if I understood you right, your point was that if I understood you right, you wanted to refer to the whole decision of 15.9, and I just wondered if this would be a quicker way of achieving that objective. India, please.
Yeah, you are correct. I want to refer it to the whole of 15.9. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, India. That's very helpful. I'm also going to preempt, and I'm going to suggest that the addition to paragraph 39 selected in a manner so as to provide a fair and equitable representation from including mega-diverse countries. I don't suggest that's an area that we're going to converge on today. So I wonder if you could work up some text for when we get to the later paragraphs, which are areas where we do not yet converge, and we can add it in there. Would that work for you, India?
Okay, no issues, co-chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much, India, for your flexibility. We really appreciate that. So a proposal to remove the words set out in paragraphs 9 and 10 from paragraph 36. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Just one real quick intervention from us on these paragraphs 36 to 39. We wouldn't be in a position to support the insertion relating to the protocols in 37. We think it's actually the guidance of the Conference of Parties that's important here, and not all countries are members of protocols and so on and so forth. So we think that we should just leave it as it was. Thank you.
Thank you, Australia. Brazil, and then the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. And regarding paragraphs 36 to 39, we would have some amendments in 36 and 37. So in 36, along the lines of our previous comments, we would suggest adding at the end of the paragraph, and in line with the obligations of the Convention, Article 15, and its Nagoya Protocol, Article 5. Because we feel that decision 15/9 does not fit in a vacuum. Actually, it stems from the obligations of the Convention and the Nagoya Protocol. So it would be helpful to relate them and to provide some context where we're coming from. And regarding paragraph 37, we would have a similar amendment, which would read as, the Global Fund should operate under the supervision and guidance of the Conference of the Parties to support the implementation of the obligations of the Convention, Article 15, and its Nagoya Protocol, Article 5. We would disagree with the understanding of Canada regarding the capability of GEF to meet those criteria. As Brazil has been consistently emphasized, we do not see that the GEF would be the best fund to include, to actually be the host of the new fund. So just to make that clear that we will not support any amendment in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Brazil. European Union, and then Indonesia.
Thank you very much, Chair. For us, in paragraph 36, the specific reference to paragraph 9 and 10 of decision 15/9 is crucial, so we cannot agree to its removal. We are happy with retaining the additions by Brazil to paragraphs 37 and 38 as possible areas of discussion. It's certainly not something we have convergence on. What I think is clear that we are operating here in the process that derives from a COP decision, and it was very clear that the decision taken there was outside of the scope of the Nagoya Protocol. I think that from our perspective also the issue, rightly so, as you said, with regard to further defining what would represent the proper representation is also something that could very usefully be discussed in the further process. And I actually need to turn to my colleague here to see whether I've forgotten something. Okay, I'm fine. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much indeed. So I will take 3 very short final interventions, and then we'll pause. So Indonesia, UK, Switzerland. Indonesia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll try to make it short. We support Brazil's latest interventions for 36, 37, and for 36 to 39 in general in relation with the JEF. We think that this is still under discussion. We have not decided yet on the fund, whether it will be under JEF or not. So we don't agree with an intention to make understanding in this regard as if we have decided this issue. And I believe the text is clear now. It doesn't mention anything about that. And our third point would be to record our understanding that this mechanism would be under CBD and the Nagoya Protocol, as mentioned by Brazil. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. UK, Switzerland, and then we'll close. UK.
Thank you, Co-Chair. In both paragraphs 36 and 37, our preference would be not to include references to the Nagoya Protocol, given that not all parties to the CBD are party to the Nagoya Protocol in the same way that Australia mentioned, and that also parties have been clear that the multilateral mechanism for digital sequence information is being established under the Convention and not the Protocol. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair.
Thank you, United Kingdom. And last on the list is Switzerland. Thank you.
Thank you, Co-Chair. So I'll be brief. I also just echo what UK said. So we would not support any reference to the Nagoya Protocol in Article paragraph 36 and 37. And then also, finally, I really want to stress that the principles set out in paragraph 9 and 10 of decision 59 are really of key importance for us, and so we would not agree to remove them from paragraph 36, so they should remain there. Thank you very much.
Thank you all very much. That's very helpful. We will resume our conversation here tomorrow on those points. Let me consult with the Secretariat. I've been informed we have 8 more minutes, 8 minutes, and there are requests for the floor. So, Norway, mic to Norway, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. What a gift.
I like that.
Where was I?
DSI.
Yes, a gift. Sorry. No, it's good. The Nagoya Protocol, we think also is outside the remits. But when it comes to the JEF, we still haven't decided whether the JEF is the appropriate fund. So we reserve our positions on that. That has to be further discussed, whether it be the JEF or something else. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway. So, Democratic Republic of Congo, then Uganda.
Merci. Thank you very much for giving me the floor, Chair. We are taking the floor to underscore the fact that we want to recall the fact that we're not really comfortable with this recalling of the proposal of the funds here. We don't want to have this reference to the JEF. We don't want to have this reference to the JEF at this level of the funds. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Democratic Republic of Congo, Uganda, Argentina, Japan, and then we'll finish.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Co-Chair. I want to go back to the proposal by India with reference to mega diverse countries and state that we we are against the inclusion of the term mega diverse countries. But I also would like to refer the parties to a decision adopted by the parties to the Nagoya Protocol on access and benefit sharing, which endorses the process established by Decision 15.9 and requests the ad hoc open-ended working group on benefit sharing from the use of digital sequence information on genetic resources to also report to the conference of the parties, serving as the meeting of the parties to the Nagoya Protocol at its 5th meeting. So I think I've had references about the Nagoya Protocol, but I think that is one of the requests that were made of this working group. Thank you.
Thank you, Uganda, Argentina, and Japan.
Muchas gracias.
Thank you very much, Chair. Firstly, recalling the conversations that were held yesterday and early this morning, I understand that there wasn't agreement nor convergence on that Jeff could meet the requirements, or that the parties had the willingness to, that this should be the host for the DSI fund. In particular, the conversations were specifically on the lack of convergence on this fund, on this point. Therefore, I would not be in agreement that the paragraphs reflect a convergence which wasn't actually there, didn't take place. Now, pertaining to Brazil's proposals, I think those are very adequate references. Also, the comment raised by Uganda and added in their intervention. These inclusions pertaining to the comment from the reaction of the EU pertaining to that there is an agreement on the paragraph 36 as it stands at the moment, but that the new additions would have to go through to items for further consideration. I would have thought that in this case there isn't an agreement on paragraph 36. Because with these references, it would be a paragraph together with references to decisions 59, references to the convention, reference to the Nagoya Protocol. I would therefore prefer, and generally, that there wasn't pick and choose, have some references and others not. And being mindful that references on decisions are also valid and others are also applicable in that case. I would just like to be mindful of this, not only for paragraphs 36 and 37, but other discussions that we have also held where these same arguments raised their heads in the room. And of course, I believe that we will continue to discuss these in tonight's session and indeed tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. I'll give the floor to Japan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On paragraph 37, we support the comments made by UK and Switzerland. The reference to Nagoya Protocol should be deleted. We think the mechanism should be operated independent of Nagoya Protocol to attract more funding. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Japan. So, thank you, dear colleagues. That's been very helpful to get us started on section D. I'm so sorry. It's been a long day. We will commence tomorrow morning exactly here, exactly where we've left off. This evening, the contact group will meet at 7:30. We will discuss proposals for intersessional work, which I think it's becoming clear we might need. Excuse me. We'll be in room E and F upstairs, and the contact group will be chaired by the co-chairs of the Committee of the Whole. Thank you very much. Enjoy your dinner.